Welcome back, everybody. So in the last video, I implemented pretty much what I said was the bare minimum to start using the graphical user interface in our games, which was T application and all the objects that depended on it: T program, T group, and T view, and T object. That's the bare minimums to start using the graphical user interface. But besides that, I wanted to implement another object, T-Dialog. T-Dialog, I use it because I display a lot of dialog windows on the screen, whether it's to display a message like saying, do you want to quit, yes or no, or to display a high score window that display the top 10 scores, or a lot of various windows that the dialog boxes that I have to display. So dialog box I use a lot in the games. So to implement that, I have to implement T dialog box, and also dialog boxes makes use of other objects, like being able to display static text to the dialog boxes. So I have to implement an object called T static text, display buttons on the screen, so you could press yes or no, okay, cancel, whatever buttons I have to press. And also I have to implement an image button, so we could display images on the screen. I use this in my dialog boxes as well. So I have to implement all those objects along with dialog box, and once I do that, I'll be able to go ahead and make my first game. Let me move this out of the way. Okay, so this is done. So let's go ahead and start with the simplest object. The simplest object is an object called T static text. What it does is simply displays static text on the screen. So it's a very simple, straightforward object. So let's go ahead and create that object, and let's start writing it, okay? Just let me get that done. Okay, so T static text is it's almost identical to T wrapper. I just display a div on the screen and displayed some text on the screen, except the difference is I specified the bounds, the region that is going to be displayed in on the screen. That's the difference between T wrapper and T static text. So let me implement the code, and I'll explain it in a minute. Okay, so basically, it's almost the same. I create a simple wrapper around TView. I specify the bounds, the region on the screen where we're going to write the text, and I specify the text that we want to write. So I call the TV constructor with the bounds, the region, the specified region, and then I say contact to the text that we want to write on the screen. Simple. Besides that, well, we gotta modify the style a little bit. So let me do that and let me explain it. Okay, perfect. I was just looking over what I wrote. So basically, what the style is doing is we're taking the default style of TView, and to that we're adding it. That we're saying that the font family, it's whatever the default font family is for the document body. We want to keep the text that we write throughout our game to look the same, so we could keep it uniform. But if let's say I write a T dialogue, and I change the default text of the dialogue to be bigger than normal, I want all the other text that I write to be pretty much the same throughout the document. So I wanted to keep the style of the body text. So what we do is in the body we specify the font family, and that'll carry over to all the text that we write throughout the game. I also decided to set the default color of our text to be white, and I decided to add some shadows, a little bit drop down shadow, and again the drop down shadow is black, so I just added some drop down shadow. So it's very simple, very small, very simple bit of code. So let's just test this code out and make sure that it's working. Okay, so pretty much what we're doing is we're using the T application to create our application that is going to be 960 by 640. You could pick whatever resolution is best for your game or for your application. I'm just using that pretty much throughout all my games. So I'm using it in this sample, and I'm inserting into the desktop some text. The text is going to be in region 1010 300 to 50, and it's just going to say this is text. So let's test that out. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, something's wrong. The text should actually be white with black shadows, and it wasn't. And that's I'm seeing my mistake right here, so I'm gonna fix it. This should have been T static text. Let me fix this. Now let's update it. Perfect. So this is looking a little bit strange. That's because the text is white and the background is white, but it's white text saying this is text with a black shadow. Now I'm going to change the background color so that you could see the text better. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I changed the default background to be pink, and I made the font a little bit bigger. I made it 25 pixels. So let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so you see the word "this" is text. The text is white, has the black shadows. It's a little bit easier to see now. The background is a different color than white. So this was very simple text. This was a very simple example. No big deal. So it's up and running. So let's move over to the next object, which is going to be the buttons. We want to create some T buttons. So that's going to be next. Okay, the next object we're going to implement is T button. I already pre-written the code. It's a pretty short one as well, so I'm going to explain it to you. This fields, I got it from the definition of T buttons. We pass it the bounds, a title, a command, and some flags. I didn't convert the TurboVision code over to JavaScript because this was a pretty simple thing to convert. For me to write myself. Later on, I'm actually convert some of the code over, but for now, I just wrote a very simple T button object that uses the same field as the TurboVision definition T button, but I wrote the code myself. So basically what we have to do is give it the bounds, give it the region on the screen where the button's going to display. The title is pretty much the text that is going to be displayed. The command is what action to take when you press the button. And the flags are like if you want it to be left justified, centered, those kind of things, which I haven't implemented yet. But I include the field just to be compatible with the TurboVision code. So since we pass it T-bounds and this inherits T-view, I call the constructor of T-view passing it the bounds. The context, I set it to T-title, which is going to be the text that's going to appear in the button. The command is going to be what command we want to execute once the button is pressed. I don't want any double quotes in that string because I'm going to use double quotes on another function that uses this. So I replace that with single quotes for now. That'll do. So basically, T button inherits from T view, and it has I overrode two properties: the style and the other property. The style, I use whatever style T view has by default. Plus, I told it to for the font to use the font of the body. Again, we want to keep the text to look the same pretty much throughout the whole application, so I'm using that font. I say no wrap for white space, so I don't want the text to wrap around. So if I make a long but tight window, I don't want the word to wrap around to the bottom. I just want it to be straight through. The color of the text is white. The background color, this is like a light blue. Back shadow, I gave it some shadows, 5 pixels by 5 pixels, and I set the blur also by 5 pixels, and the shadow is black, obviously. I want the button to be curved, so a border radius of 10 pixels. So I want the box around the button to be slightly curved around the edges. So I set that up, and the border around the edges, I want it to be 1 pixel and to be black. So the the button itself is going to be blue with a black thin border around it. By default, I'm telling the text to be in the center and in the middle, but this is actually going to change later on once I implement flags, because flags is going to tell it how we want it to justify that. And for the cursor, I told it that we want the little pointy finger to appear once you go around the cursor. The other function that I overrode is the others function. What this does is that it includes certain things. It includes that a mouse over, it executes this. A mouse out, it executes this. And on click, it executes the command that we passed it. So what is a mouse over and a mouse out? I want some effects to happen when you mouse over the button or when you exit. When you mouse over the button, I want you to see that it's an active button that you could click, right? So what I did was I said that when you mouse over, I wanted to set the filter to invert the pixels colors 25%. And when you mouse out, invert it back to regular, to 0%. Invert it back to 0%. That's on most browsers. That's on the on just about all the browsers. On most browsers, I'm gonna use the WebKit filter field in style. This is for compatibility with old browsers. For newer browsers, like if the Firefox has the newer versions, I mean all versions of Firefox pretty much. I don't have to say WebKit. I just say filter and invert, and that should set that field inverted. I'm going to show you what it looks like in a minute. For other browsers like the Internet Explorer, that does not support filter or the filter field, what I did is I set the opacity to be somewhat transparent, 50% transparent. So pretty much what this is going to do, I'll mouse over. When you mouse over, if it's most browsers, is going to invert the color 25%, or if it's an Internet Explorer or something compatible with an Internet Explorer, it's going to send the image transparent. And when you mouse out, it's going to put everything back the way it was. And on click, it's going to be that you click. It's going to execute the command that you passed in. So let's test this out, okay? Let me just write the code to test it out. Okay, so we're gonna use T buttons, and I inserted into the desktop 2 buttons. Wait, it's capital U, and I mean undercase U. So we're gonna insert into the desktop 2 buttons. One is gonna be in the region 10, 100, 100 to 140, and it's gonna display the word press. And when you press on it, it's gonna display an alert saying the word press. The other button that I inserted is going to be in the region 200, 100, 260 to 140, and it's going to display the word OK. And when you click on it, it's going to display a little alert that says OK. That's simple. So let's test it out. Let's see what it looks like. This is what the previous code looked like. So let's update it to see it with the buttons. Okay, so there we go. See the 2 buttons here? We see the 2 buttons. So if I click on the button, it displays an alert saying press. If I click on the other button, it displays an alert saying OK. Now this, when you see when I hover over it, it kind of makes it a little bit darker. That's because it's using the invert function. Now let's see what it looks like on Internet Explorer. In Internet Explorer, it looks pretty much the same, except when I hover it, it goes transparent. So you see that you can see like the pink going through it a little bit. I had to write the code differently for both browsers because Internet Explorer didn't support the same properties that the other browser supported. So I had to write code for it. So this is kind of makes it backwards compatible with very old browsers. So if I click on it, there you go, press OK. I click on this, press OK. Okay, so perfect. So now we've tested out that we could draw buttons on the screen. The next up is going to be T image and T speed button, I believe I called it. Let's see what the next 2 functions are going to be. But as soon as I write the next 2 functions, I'm going to be able to write T dialog, which is what I actually need to start using it in my games. Okay, now we're going to implement the object T image. We want to display images on the screen. So to do that, I'm going to implement a simple object called T image. This is not part of the TurboVision library, but I need to add it because TurboVision was a text graphical user interface. This is actually uses graphics, so we need to display graphics on the screen. So I'm going to add an object called TImage to display images on the screen. So let's get started. Now I've decided to create 3 fields. a field called bounds, a field called image, and a field called command. The command field is optional. If you want to make the image clickable, you include the command field. That's what to execute when you click on it. The image, of course, is a link to the is the path to the image, is the image file that you want to display, and the bound is a little bit flexible. Bound could be the rectangular region where the image is going to be displayed, like the origin and the size, the bounds region, or it could be a point. You don't have to specify the size of an image. It'll just display it as its full size. So bounds could either be a point or a rectangle, depending whether you just want to display specify where to display it, or you want to specify where to display it and its size. So bounds could have two different types. So I'm gonna write the code to execute, to do the right thing depending on the type the bound is. Okay. Okay, so right now, this is checking for both types. If it's a box, if it's a T-rect, it has a field called A, because remember, T-rect is made up of two fields, A and B, which are the 2 points of the rectangles in the corners. So if it finds it has a field called A, it's of type rectangle, and it'll call TView, sending it the bounds. TView knows what to do. If it's not a rectangle, I'm going to assume it's a point, so I'm just going to call TView without passing it the bounds, and I'm going to send the origin to be bounds. Origin, since bounds will actually be a point to display where you want it to, a point saying where you want it to be displayed on the screen. We'll set origin to be that point. Besides that, we have to set the image to whatever we send the image path to be, the image file to be. And command is also optional. So I'm going to say if you pass the argument, the third argument through, send command to that third argument. Otherwise, set it to an empty string. So let me write that code. Okay, so if I didn't make the writing mistake, this is the shorthand to saying if you pass the third argument being command, then set command to that command, replacing all double quotes with simple quotes. Otherwise, set the command to an empty string. Okay, so now we're saying that T image is going to extend TView. And we need to set the three methods: the draw method, the style method, and the other method. Since we have style here, let's set style already. So with style, we specify the position absolute, we specify the tab and the left. So this stays the same. We don't have any extra styles pretty much here, so let's just get rid of this. There's also a field called other. A function called other. That's to set those miscellaneous fields that we didn't think of earlier. So I'm gonna set the width and the height here of the image if you specify it, and I'm also gonna set the command if you specify it. Now I could set the width and the height in style, or I could set it here. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna set it here right now, just because it really doesn't matter where I set it. I could, like again, I could set it in style, or I could set it here, the width and the height. I'm gonna do it here, just to be different. Okay, so this first line, what it does is checks if the size of x is equal to 0. 0 is what it is set by default. So if I haven't set this specify a size, it's going to be by default 0. So if it's not 0, it means I actually specify as a size. So I'm going to set the width and the height to the size I specify. Let me spell this right. The width and the height to the size I specify. Here, width and height. So next thing is I'm gonna also set any unclick command. So if we set a command, when we click on it, we want the command to execute. So I'm gonna write the code for that now. So again, if I typed everything right without making a spelling mistake, it's going to check if this command is not an empty string. If it's not an empty string, that means I actually passed a command that I want to execute. So I wrote on the div unclick whatever the command that I'm passed. So execute when you click on it, that command. Now I'm actually have to write the draw function that is going to draw it, because I cannot use the default draw since I'm not drawing a div. I'm drawing an image. I cannot use the default draw of TView. So let me write the custom draw function. Okay, so if I didn't make any writing mistakes, what I'm creating is an image. The image is going to have the style I specified that here. It's going to have an ID of view plus this ID. The source is going to be the image I passed, and the others is going to be any extra field I didn't think of, which is the unclick command and the width and the height in this case. So I check the image. I check that the image has an owner, and if it has an owner, I write the image inside the owner, and I return the HTML just in case you want to manipulate it later on. So this is pretty much all the code. So right now what this should do, it seems like a lot of code just to display an image, but we only have to write it once, and then the code that we reuse is going to be pretty simple, straightforward. So let's test this out. This, if the minimum I have to specify is a point and the image I want to display on the screen. The command is optional, and bounds doesn't have to be a region. It could be just a single point. So let's test this out. So earlier I have loaded an image in my image folder called home.png. Right now what I'm saying is insert into the desktop that image at position 10,300, the home.png image. So let's test it out. It should just display that image. So this is what the code was before. Let's update it. Okay, so there was an error. Let's see what the error was. Unexpected equal. Okay, let's see. I put one too many equals, so let's fix that. Let's test it out now. Okay, perfect. Well, not perfect. It's not displaying the image, so let's see why it's not displaying the image. But it's got an empty space where the image is supposed to go, so let's see. Okay, I gotta set this here. It's relative to the home. Let's see now. There, perfect. So now it's displaying this image here. So now we created text, buttons, and image. The next one that I'm going to create before I implement T-Dialog is clickable image. So it's just an image which you're going to be able to hover over like this and click on it, and something executes when you click on it. So that's next. Okay, the next object that we're going to create is an object I'm calling the speed button. Actually, what it is a combination of a regular button and an image. So it's an image that acts like a button. So and a more appropriate name would probably be image button, but I call it speed button because I'm gonna add some more features in the futures, and I'm gonna call it make it equivalent to a Windows library button called speed button. But right now, the way it acts, a more appropriate name would be image button, but I'm gonna keep the name speed button for now. So let's create speed button. This is a simple one also. Okay, for the sake of flexibility, since this is it acts like the image, but with the features of a button, I'm gonna keep both the fields that I have in image, which is bound, image, and command, and I'm gonna add for flexibility two other optional fields called style and other, so I could insert some text for styling or other features that I didn't think of. I don't plan to use this to field a lot. I'm just using them to be on the cautious side right now, so that if I want to do anything that I haven't implemented, I could just insert it right here and have it in the games without me having to rewrite the code for now. So this speed button is gonna be derived from T image, and it's gonna have the same fields in T image, bounds, image, and command. So let me write the code for that. Okay, so right now I've created the speed button. It calls the constructor of T image with the bounds, image, and command fields, and it checks if I have included the two additional field called style and other, and creates two variables, underscore style and underscore other, and it holds whatever information I pass with those fields. So I'm pretty much inheriting in extending the image. I don't need a draw command because I'm going to use the image draw command. So let me get rid of this. The style, um, I'm going to use the T image style, plus I'm going to add a little bit of extra stuff. So let me write the code for that. So the style, what I'm doing is I'm using the function. I'm inheriting the style function from T image, and I'm adding to it saying that make the cursor a pointer. That is, when you hover over the image, make the cursor change to a pointing finger, and just add any extra style I want to add that I forgot to add, or that I want to extend it by from the optional field style above. Now I want to implement other. Give me 1 second. Okay, let me just make sure I didn't make any typing mistakes. So if I'm correct, the others should inherit the properties from others from T image. Add the others field that I've added optionally, just in case I want to add anything else. And then that's the feature that when you mouse over it, it makes it darker, and when you mouse out of it, it makes it regular. So it's gonna act like a T button. When you hover over it, it's gonna get darker, and when you mouse out of it, it's gonna get clearer, and it's gonna act like a image that it displays an image, and if you click on it, it'll execute something. So if I haven't made any typing mistakes, this should be ready. So let's test it out. Okay, so I'm inserting a speed button. A speed button is just like an image. I give it a point or a bound. I'm just giving it a point on the screen. I'm putting out position 200, 300. Displaying the same home button as I did with the image, except that when it hovers over it, it should make it darker so you know it's a button. And when you click on it, it'll display the alert home message. So if I haven't made any mistakes typing it, let's test it out and see what this looks like. So there you go. We have text, we have buttons. So if you hover over the buttons, it makes the button darker so you know that you could click on it. And if you click on it, it displays the message I say to display. Then we have regular images, which is just displays an image doing nothing. And we have this speed buttons, which are like a combination between an image and a button. It displays an image. When you hover over it, it makes it darker so you know it's clickable. And when you click on it, it displays a message. Now, this is not displaying a message. I must have made a mistake typing it. Let me see what mistake I made. Okay, that was a mistake I made. It was missing a quote. Let me refresh that. Let me click on it. There you go. So it displays the message home. So right now I've created text, buttons, image, and clickable image, which I call speed buttons. Now I can move onto the T dialog and its descendants. For that, I'm gonna have to convert some TurboVision code over. So I'm gonna come back with the TurboVision code converter. Okay, we almost up to T dialog, which is the last object we want to implement before we start making games. Before we implement T dialog, we have to implement T window. T window actually is where most of the code is to T dialog. T dialog is just a small wrapper around T window. So what T window does is it displays a window with some buttons on it, like a close button, a zoom button, a grow button, and it does a few other things. It draws a window with a title and with some buttons on it that you could click on it to grow the window, to close the window, to do other things. I haven't implemented most of the code. This is the code that I actually converted from TurboVision. The modifications I made is that in the TurboVision code you insert a frame, and the frame is what has the icons for the close, grow, and zoom, and all the other features. I'm adding this directly to the T Windows group. Right now, the only thing I've implemented is a little close window, a little close icon. I did that by adding a speed button at the top right corner of the window with a little X for you to click on it and close the window. Well, when you click on the X, it calls a method called close for this object. This is how you call this object. You say applet list and this ID. It'll look up the object in the applet list, and then you tell it to call the close method. Now, I haven't implemented the original source of the close method. The original source of the close method actually removes the object from the application. I'm not removing it. I just see I commented out of the code. All I'm doing it is hiding the object. So when you call the close method, all it does is hide the object so you don't see it on the screen. You could later on display the object so it unhides it. So that's the difference from the original code in my code. The close method, I modify it. I'm not calling T-frame. I'm just adding some icons on the window. Also, all this code is pretty much the same. Also, at the end, the style and the draw I modified. I have to always modify the draw and these things because they're very dependent on the JavaScript implementation, not on the Windows version or DOS version, whatever Turbo version was written for originally. So my style, what I do, I say use the style, the default style from T Group, plus add a background color of a kind of little a burnt yellow color. Do a shadow, back shadow around the dialog with rounded corners. Border radius 10 gives you rounded corners, and a black outline around it, 1 pixel width. So that's what the style does that I overrode. And the draw method, basically what I say is draw itself by calling T group draw, and then check if this object has the flag WF close set to it. If it has the close flag set, it means you want to show the close icon, so it makes it visible. That's pretty much the difference from the original JavaScript vision code and my code. I made these modifications. So right now, if I call this it should display a window with a close icon and some other stuff. Let's see what are the other stuff. The original code had 3 parameters: the bounds, the region where you're gonna draw it, a title that you're gonna give the window, and a window number. Now I haven't implemented window number. This is supposed to be like if you press Alt 1, 2, 3, or 4, it focuses that window. I haven't implemented any of that code. But if you give it a title, I do draw the title on the screen here as a static text. So we're already using some of the code I've implemented. And I draw a close icon on the screen. And it only displays it if we have WF close set in the flags field, which it is set by default here. So let's test this code out and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so this is the modified code. What I did is I created a window on the screen that is going to be extend from 1010 to 300 200. That's going to be the region on the screen that is going to display. And the title is going to say, let's change this to close me. It's gonna say close me because it's gonna have a little close icon, and that's the only thing you could pretty much do with that, with that window right now. Close me because I haven't added anything else. So let's test this out and let's see what that looks like. Okay, so nothing showed up. Let's see. I must have typed something wrong. Let's just look. Okay, gave me an error saying that it didn't know what speed button was. In T window, I used T speed button, but I didn't specify up here that I was going to use it, so I got to include it. Let me include it. Okay, perfect. I've included speed button, so let me test it out. Let's see if it works now. Okay, perfect. So it draws a little window with this yellow color. The title says "Close Me," and all it does is display a little close icon on the screen. Everything else is blank because I haven't inserted anything else to the dialog. So I could press on that button and close the window. Pretty much, that's the only thing I could do right now. So next thing that we want to implement, we almost over, is T-Dialog. And T-Dialog is a small derivative of T-Window. All it does is set some fields by default to, like, for the zoom and the what is it? What are the fields that it sets by default? I believe that the only difference between dialog, it has a little bit extra code different, but it also says that by default don't show the grow icon and don't show the zoom icon by default, which I haven't even implemented, so it's not going to show it. So there's pretty much not going to be any difference between T-Window and T-Dialog, except that these two fields are going to be by default turned off, so it's not going to show them. And I'll show you. We'll get back to T-Dialog and I'll show you the difference, but it's going to be a very small difference from T-Windows. Most of the code has already been implemented in T-Window. Okay, and we're finally up to T-Dialog. That's the last one that we're going to do in this video. Now, T-Dialog is a straightforward conversion from TurboVision. I didn't have to write any new code. I just converted the code from TurboVision. It was very little code. It was handle event and a valid function. The only difference from T-Dialog and T-Window, Window just inherits everything. T-Dialog inherits everything from T-Window, except by default it says only the flags will be movable and closable. It doesn't set the other flags active. Okay, so it doesn't set the zoom flag or the other flags active. One thing that I did modify is that in the TurboVision code, it keeps track of every window that you open. I set the windows to 0 because I haven't written that bit of the code where it keeps track of the different windows, the different window number yet. So I just set every window to have a number of 0 because I haven't implemented the code. So since I didn't have to write any custom code except just pretty much convert the TurboVision code over, this code, there's a link in the description of this video where all the code is available, so you could see the code, download it, and use it yourself for your games, or in the games that I make, you could use them. So basically, this is done. I didn't have to do any custom coding except just convert this over. So we're just going to test out the t-log code and see, after we see an example, we'll be able to start making games. So let me just write an example of it. Okay, so what I did was I created a dialog called T Game Over. It inherits the default T dialog with a title that says Game Over, and it displays a button with the word close, and the button just calls the close method of itself. That's pretty much what I did. So it's going to display a little window that says Game Over, and it's going to have a button that says close under that you could click on it to close the window. Let me insert it at the bottom. So let's test it out and see what it looks like. Okay, perfect. So it worked right off the beginning. So this is the T window. The T window has a window that says close me with just the icon. I created a T dialog, which I inserted a close button here, which we could close the window. So here, by clicking on close me, we could close this guy. Here, by clicking on this guy or on the close button, we could close this guy. So let me click on this one since I click on the top. Boom, and we close both of them. So dialogues are working. So I could insert images, I could insert buttons, I could insert text, I could do any complex things in my games, and that's all I needed to start making games. So the next video should be of how to make a game. So we'll start making games now.